I'm Mary, I'm a patient representative, and can I just say thank you for inviting us. We found it very interesting, very informative, and very helpful from a patient point of view. I come from the Birmingham area. We were asked to look at where we are with digital means today. And we realised that this is a huge spectrum, and it goes from having very limited occasional use right through to fully integrated patient education and care. It can be used for rare disease and syndromes information for patients. It can be used, we can have recommended internet websites for patients as complementary information. It can also be useful looking at symptoms, knowledge and healthcare, latest developments using an avatar. And here our colleague in the group from Holland, they use something called Health Buddies. Use of telemonitoring and also patient initiations versus doctor initiations, use of the internet. We looked at examples. Clinical research, patients working with these groups on clinical research studies, trials, study design, focus groups, steering committees, and other examples. Communication with patients via SMS, Facebook, Twitter, TV broadcast or YouTube, and groups on social media. And that all begs the question, the educated patient, how do we handle this?
Hello, my name's Janet Hall. I was a banker. I have no medical history at all. And I'm just been asked to speak to you about our heading, which was educating patients through digital means, and I'm just here as a patient. First, we thought age, is it a myth or is it a limitation? Most of the people with heart problems, I believe, are in the older, well, both of us are 69 and 70 odd. And do we use the media? Do we use digital means? We thought that this was probably quite applicable. Education, we felt that patients and doctors need to be educated on digital means. But we did feel that sometimes money for people was a problem for them to access and have devices like tablets and mobile phones, particularly older people. Also, we felt that the quality and the reliability of the contents that we could gain on the internet, we meant that it had got to be valid, it's got to be patient-friendly, it's got to be up-to-date, but most of all, I think it's got to be easy for patients to understand. Sometimes we don't understand the words that are said to us, and maybe some patients feel too nervous to ask. We did think that some patients tend to be quite expert. They go on the internet and read all about their condition, and sometimes doctors do seem to treat us as a bit of a threat if we make a comment. Is something that needs to be embraced, and they need to be prepared for patients to know a little bit more of the subject. And also we felt that time was important. Patients might need a bit more time than some of the consultants and doctors have to give to them. Our summary was information versus education. digital means can be used for both, we thought.
Thank you very much, Mary and Janet. It really has been absolutely brilliant having the two of you. Not only you've benefited, but we had an excellent discussion. Just to introduce myself, I'm Vijay Kunadian. I'm an academic interventional cardiologist based in Newcastle, United Kingdom. I'm also representing the EAPCI young community at this meeting. To look at the opportunities, how ESC can involve patients through the digital means. Again, we had an extensive discussion about this, and it was brought to our attention during our discussion that there are patient material available on heart failure and atrial fibrillation in several languages. But one of the aspects was that not everybody were aware of it in our group, that such a material was available. So in addition to creating contents that are beneficial for patients relating to their disease-specific areas, it's about communication and dissemination to improve the awareness of such materials that are available so that patients can benefit from. And how we do that is perhaps through, from ESC through the various countries and the national societies, and making the information more available from the societies to the patients as such. And we had extensive discussions about information that comes through. And of course, our patients receive first-hand information, particularly when a big trial gets presented through the local newspapers and other online news that comes up. But that necessarily may not be the accurate reflection of the science or the work that has been done. So we had a discussion about whether, of course, we have a press release following late-breaking presentations in every society and European Society of Cardiology, whether we also have a patient information presented in more in terms of layman terminology, so that patients receive a reliable and accurate information of a scientific trial that's been presented, whether that get translated, well, not translated, but put in more of a layman terminology, whether we use patients perhaps that have participated in the trials also come and take part in these press releases. And we also had a lot of discussion about guidelines, and of course the guidelines are available to clinicians, and whether that will be beneficial for patients as such. And whether we create a lay summary, not necessarily 50 or 60-page document that often the guidelines are, maybe provide a short summary of the various guidelines relating to the disease-specific areas, whether they can be made available, and of course use the patient representatives to help convert them into the layman terminology. And also provide some information, and of course it's digital information to patients, as we've discussed about the limitation, can be overwhelming to patients. So we don't want to provide them with every possible information and cause concern and worry, and perhaps provide information to patients so that they can go back to their doctors and ask relevant questions or things that they are not fully on board with. And also we talked about involving patients more widely in the Congress committees. So the scope of how we educate patients through digital means, we also discussed about there are some patient materials that are available on the various disease in other societies. So how do we market these to the patients, directly to the patients and for the patients? Whether is it a competition, or whether we provide new information? Of course, that would be open for discussion. And we also talked about, given it's an overwhelming sometimes for patients to have so much information, whether, and not all doctors and clinicians are on board with all the information that are available, whether ESC should focus their attempts on educating the doctors themselves as a platform to educate patients through the digital means.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for this group? Yeah.
My name is Juha Hartikainen. I'm coming from Finland. I had two things. One thing is that today there is so much information for the, let's say, normal people, also patients. And I guess that it's very difficult for the patient to understand which is true and which is untrue for several reasons. For example, let's say I take some examples about what is how patients are discussing in Finland. For example, if I take like cholesterol, we think that cholesterol is a bad thing. We have to take care of that and bring it down, etc. But then there might be some living discussions that I have owned, and she had high cholesterol and she died at the age of 95. So cholesterol is not an issue. It's not an important thing. And patients, people like to hear this because they think, okay, now they are free to do everything because cholesterol is not an issue. So patients tend to take what they like to take. Then there are also information which is based on some other purposes, like economical things. Somebody wants to make money and maybe has some drug or some drug-like things, and the only idea is to make money. So that can be also misinformation. So how the patient can understand which is true information, and so I think that one of the things might be that we have, let's say, ESC information or something, which so that patients gradually know that this is true information. It's also evidence-based. Maybe they don't know in the first line that what is evidence-based, but gradually they understand that this is something which has been validated, this is true. And the second thing is that usually patients, they don't know what is guideline or these kind of things. They don't try to find medical journals. Usually they use Google or these kind of means. So if our message is, if you get 10 hits, if it's number 99 or 100, so usually what matters is 1, 2, 3 or 5, so the first page. So how our message would become the first which they find, because then it has the best chances to get implemented.
Okay, thanks. So I guess, Mary, the question for you guys is, do patients select what they want to hear from their consultations? How do we overcome that?
I'm sure that's very true. Some patients won't even want to select any information. Down will come the shutters and they won't want to know. But I still think that most patients want information. A lot of them will have sought it before they come to see you. But I think the important thing is really that patients are getting correct information and up-to-date information and relevant information. And as our colleague from Finland, I think, pointed out, if you can be the number one hit when you do a Google search, that's very important. Yeah.
It's quite challenging for us to be number one hits because, the sort of the sexy answers go to the top and they're often not the correct ones. But that's really interesting about selecting things. I think from my experience, I think I agree with you. I think we probably underestimate what patients bring to that conversation, and the shared decision making, I think, is really important.
My name is Rafa Salabanca, I'm from Spain. Just asking from the patient point of view, we've had an experience in my area that now we have an app that anybody can have access to, and it's your own clinical records. So you have your app in your phone, you put your ID number and your name, and you can have access to your blood test, to all the reports, all the outpatient reports, discharge summaries, CT scan report, everything is available for the user, for the patient. Funnily enough, you can have access to the waiting list. So how long is it, how many people are in front of me on the waiting list? So it's so open, and it's in your smartphone, in your mobile. It's very useful because if you have an appointment, we can remind you the day before you have an appointment tomorrow. You have to click that you've seen it, so we know that you know. So it's very useful, but the big surprise is that people are not using it as much as it is thought it was going to be used. So I would like to know your opinion on how this openness, how this be able to look at everything that you have in your hospital records, you think is useful or not?
I don't know whether a lot of the people you see, what are the age range you're hitting at?
This is open, this is for
Everybody, right. To be quite honest, I think some of the older ones, probably myself included, would need assistance in getting into it. Is it easy to get into it?
It is very easy. It is very easy.
Oh, right, okay.
Blood test,
I think,
blood test,
yeah.
you get on the blood.
I think a lot of elder people might be a bit hesitant about going into it. I don't know, I'd want to know all my medical
I think
history.
there'd be a lot of fear with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I also think that to have all your results out there, for some people is fine, but knowing how to interpret those results, and if you've got an appointment with a doctor the following day, it might mean that somebody has a very sleepless night. I don't know, I would have, I'd want a lot more experience. I don't know. I think it might be a step too far. I don't know.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. My name is Julia Grabsa. I just want to mention that as ESC social media have received a lot of comments by patients asking information. And we had like 6-7 cases of patients. 2 of them, they were quite desperate. They gave us a list of medicines and they were asking for a second opinion. And that was quite tricky because the patients seemed quite stressed about that, but we had to provide a general comment that they should go back to their primary physician, or if they want to look for a second or third opinion from another physician. You know, if we do not see the patient and if we do not eyeball the patient, for us it's very difficult to give any kind of advice. And from my experience from US, as you understand, because we have a lot of legal implications, every single movement that we are doing, either if I call a patient or if I send an email to a patient or if a patient contacts me directly, it is documented for legal purposes. So that's why we need to be very careful. And I want to only to mention this, that ESC social media have already received very stressed messages from patients, but we are unable to provide direct advice to patients, and that would be unprofessional.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Julia. There is a very fine line as to how we handle this, and the more we go on social media we get. I personally have received a lot of emails from regions where I'm not even, never been, asking patients, asking questions, and it's directing them to the local clinicians and local general practitioners is the right thing, and not to provide advice to them over the social media or even email communications if they are not your direct patients. Yeah.
Thank you. I apologise. I'm sure we could spend another hour on this, and I'm really grateful to Mary and Janet for coming and enriching this conference. So let's give them a round of applause. Thank you.